The Eyes of Argos. We are watching. Significant room of ground 46.1. The Profane Burial Site. Survival difficulty. Class Picadum. Profane. Major damage. Abundance of creatures. Image caption. The innumerable tombs on the surface of the Profane Burial Site. Description. In the innermost circle of the monastery, protected by walls, wards, and wardens alike, is the Profane Burial Site, custody of the unclaimed souls. The Profane Burial Site is the confinement where the bones of the most wicked sinners are left to rot, and where the rejected remains of our hunts are to be imprisoned, for these vicious souls will never find eternal rest. The monastery and the Profane Burial Site were specifically constructed within the saline dunes because of its salt's inertness, which intrinsically repels the lower spiritual forces. On top of this natural shield, many incantations and rites are ritually performed to ensure that the abominations of the Profane Burial Site remain dormant for as long as possible. The Profane Burial Site consists of a surface-level cemetery where the least dangerous bones are entombed, and a series of underground crypt levels where the most malignant souls are confined. The surface level is a fenced cemetery from which the entirety of the Profane Burial Site is accessed. Decades of hunting by the Eyes of Argos have caused the surface area to be cluttered with gravestones, to the point that they have to be erected on top of each other. Despite all of the efforts to keep the souls of the buried slumbering, most of them eventually regain enough substance of self to be able to manifest themselves as a physical wraith. Footnote: Wraiths is the designation given to souls that are in a state of perpetual unrest and cyclical revival. The guilt of their past life and the rage of their current form does not allow them to dissipate, and so they return as vengeful spirits. End footnote. Whenever this occurs, it is the sacred duty of all who reside in the monastery to bring them down once again by brutal force, putting them to unrest for another cycle. The level of corporeal integrity the wraith manages to attain once it manifests will depend on a number of factors, which include the number and severity of crimes committed while alive, the strength of their original form, and the damage suffered by their soul when they perished. In accordance to these principles, the strongest foes are those that retain most of their legacy. It is for this very reason that many watchers from all bastions come to the monastery to test themselves against the remnants of our most prominent hunts. The resurgence of the dead within the Profane Burial Site is also used as a means of training, providing aspiring watchers with opponents of all kinds and capabilities. The newly awakened wraiths are guided by instinct and bloodlust only, so they seek to escape from the confines of the Profane Burial Site and reach the nearest gathering of living beings, the monastery. Taking advantage of this, the area around the gates of the Profane Burial Site is cleared of tombstones and is used as a battleground where watchers fight and return the spirits to their graves. Low-level wraiths can be battled in singular combat, but the more wicked ones require the combined strength of multiple watchers. The most perverse remnants, of which revival cycles often last decades, demand the presence of Argos himself, as they are evils so primal only he can face. Image caption: The underground crypts of the Profane Burial Site. These particularly malicious bones are, however, not buried among the dunes of salt, but deep underground. Beneath the surface, a labyrinth of tunnels, crypts, and chambers was built to trap the remains of the most malevolent individuals. The underground complex was constructed following Argos' strict guidance and design, which gave the crypts many unnatural properties. The passageways fold and twist upon themselves unnoticeably, just like many other grounds of the labyrinth. preventing wraiths from easily reaching the path to the surface after they regain their physical form. Unlike the souls that are buried on the surface, the spirits locked in the subterranean levels often lose what little humanity they have left. After cycles and cycles of death and resurrection, the extensive corruption that exists within their souls eventually overpowers their will, distorting their physical manifestation. When these wraiths manifest, they do not do so as spiritual copies of their lost physical shell, but as beasts, molded from their most heinous sins. Renowned burials. The Mausoleum of Betrayal. Burial of the Watchers who dared to raise their weapons against their own. Though they were foolish enough to betray the ways of the Eyes of Argos by committing such a sin, their souls retain enough horror not to awaken and draw their weapons against their former peers again. They all remain dormant. The Royal Tomb. Empty. The Royal Remnant is the only wraith ever to escape from the confines of the Profane burial site. Aided by the leftovers of his army, and using trickery and deceptions during a time of crisis, he managed to cowardly evade the few warrens that had been stationed to guard the site at the time. The Pit. On the deepest chamber of the crypts, a pit that reaches into the very nothingness was carved. The bones of the first sinner were thrown inside. We pray they never return.